When I'm designing a custom modern home, no matter how strong I think the first conceptual option that I've come up with is, I always like to explore different options. So today we're going to look at a conceptual layout for an alternate option. If you haven't watched any of the other videos in this series of designing a custom modern home, please just stop the video right here and go back into the playlists and watch from the beginning, because you really need to watch these videos in order to know what's going on. So in the last video, we explored some conceptual design options through a series of sketches. And today we're going to be looking at option number 2. Now I'm probably going to be taking both of these options up through at least a preliminary schematic level, because I like to explore multiple different ways of solving the problem, and then eventually through iteration it will be narrowed down to one option. So we're starting here with our site, and as you know, we have a pretty long site that has a slope up towards the back with a pond across the street. Now the first option explored two sort of almost parallel volumes that were both sort of pointing at that pond. But now I want to look at a longer volume where the length of the house could have that view towards the pond. And maybe the garage can be in the back of the house with a driveway connecting to the shared access road. With this layout, if we have the kitchen sort of breakfast area towards the far end of the house, then that means we can still get that morning sunlight, which is important to the homeowners, to be able to sit out and have their morning cup of coffee and get that natural light and still have the views towards the pond. Maybe the garage wants to be closer to that shared access drive with the yard opening up towards the back of the house. Maybe that would work better. And the main entry to the house can be in between. Down in this option, if the garage was pushed back, maybe we could have the main entry to the house somewhere in here, separating a kitchen area from the other living spaces. And that kitchen area could have a material quality to filter the light, and maybe the entryway gets sort of pushed through. And there could be something at the end condition of the house that again allows for a filtering of light. Now I want to redraw that conceptual diagram a little bit larger, so I'm taking it off the site and just exploring the form itself. Now if we have the volume of the house with the long end facing the pond, maybe one section can be kitchen area, and maybe the end could have a material condition that filters the light. Maybe the kitchen area opens up to that breakfast eating area, and then the main entry can sort of come in between sort of the kitchen and the rest of the living space. Then if we think about having a perpendicular volume come out the back, and then maybe off the end of the living room we can have the primary suite. So across that front view facing the pond, we have kitchen, dining, living, primary bedroom, sort of as 3 separate volumes. And if that back volume was the kids' bedrooms, the garage could be up more towards that shared access drive, and then you'd have a space in between the kids' bedrooms and the garage that could create this sort of inner courtyard. And again, the entry can be sort of in between these volumes, and maybe with a form that starts to slide out from the main volume. And then across the front, you can have a big long deck. And then maybe that seating area again has a more open facade with the views down to the pond and allows the sun to get in the morning. And so you can have that courtyard area that has access both to the main house and to the backyard, and the cars could come in off the shared access drive. And then maybe people have to sort of walk in between the garage and the main house, and you have this moment of sort of walking in between those two volumes and seeing that courtyard before you turn and you come into the house, and then the entryway pulls you straight through to the view to the pond. And again, we want to accentuate these volumes by having a small connector piece in between. The trick is making those connector pieces usable, such as like a little sitting area or reading area. And then maybe the kids' bedroom areas could have the 2 bedrooms, and then you could have a zone of circulation along that courtyard, and you could have a series of windows looking out to the courtyard, and then the 2 bedrooms have a view back out to the yard behind. And we could have a 3-car garage in there, the primary bedroom, the living room, and the kitchen dining area all have those views out towards the pond. Maybe we have some vegetation that blocks the view of the house from that shared access drive. I think that's really important. And we know that the site is going to slope down. That deck could probably go all the way across the back of the house. It's kind of nice to have the kitchen dining area and the living room area still be open to each other, but also be separate spaces. That's one of the things that the client mentioned to me. And putting the form of the house in this orientation with the length facing that pond view allows for a big, massive deck that could be used and get a lot of afternoon and evening sun. And you can eat meals out there or sit out there and have views of the pond and have views of the sunset. And that could be a really nice space. All right, let's explore this form in some more detail. Starting with the kitchen dining room area. These spaces can be separate, where the dining room area can have a much more open feel with the light or something to screen the sunlight with a view out to the pond. And then you have the kitchen directly adjacent to it. And instead of having the kitchen open to the living room, maybe the kitchen is open to this dining area. And then you can use a pantry space behind the main kitchen to separate it from the rest of the house. And maybe there's a bank of cabinets along the back side. So you have one side that's really solid and then the other side that's very open to the views. And I think at the end there, we might not want it to be all glass. We might want to have some sort of sun shading or sun filtering device. Then in the next volume over, we have sort of that living room area. And by putting the pantry in between the living area and sort of the kitchen dining, it has that effect of it still being a somewhat open space, but you get the privacy. And then at the end, you can have the primary suite connected to the living room area through a little connector. And then again, having a separate volume come out for the kids' bedrooms. And then here we have this sort of entry sequence that will take you from the front of the house looking to the pond all the way to the back. The garage space, again, like I mentioned before, it could frame that inner courtyard between the garage and the kids' bedrooms. And maybe even the sort of in-law suite wants to be part of that, where it's its own separate little entity. And that way, anyone staying in the in-law suite doesn't have to worry about waking people up in the morning, and they can have their own sort of little private area. And it's connected to the main house through the courtyard. One thing that's really nice about this layout is you can have people that park in the garage or exit out the back and then have to walk through that courtyard to get to the main house. Now, some people might like to have a attached garage because it allows them in the wintertime to go out to their vehicle without having to get out into the cold. But there's something really, I think, special about having to walk through an outdoor space, especially a planned outdoor space that transitions you from your home to your vehicle, right? You want that transition. You want that moment to have something special about it. And by having this sort of inner courtyard that's hidden from all the rest of the surrounding area, it really provides this moment that you will only get sort of walking from the house to the car. And maybe there's some sort of overhead protection that if it's raining or snowing, that you won't get wet. Again, the visitors can come sort of in between the volumes. You sort of have to walk from the driveway between those two volumes, get a view of the courtyard into that main entry. But then what about the home office? We haven't talked about the home office yet. So maybe the home office can be somewhere off to the side that's sort of closer to that more public area of the shared access drive. And if people are coming to the office, they might park in the driveway, and there could be a pathway that leads between the house and the office. And the office can have some sort of public circulation zone, or maybe an area that has windows that opens up away from the street, and maybe that area is a little bit lighter or a little bit more open, and then the side facing the shared access road becomes more solid. And that front corner can be something that's expressed, because that would get afternoon and morning sun. And then you can take the deck all the way across and wrap it around, like we talked about in the last option, having the deck sort of pull you from the parking area to the primary view. So now just think, if you're a visitor and you're arriving, you can walk between the garage volume and the main house to that courtyard and in, or if you're going to the office space, you can walk at that deck, or even if you're just visiting and you know that the family's out on the deck, you have the ability to have that deck sort of pull you around. And again, you can still have some sort of vegetation along that shared access road that provides some screening from the office, and maybe some more vegetation up near the driveway. And again, you want to be able to have a view of the office, some of these peeking out views between this vegetation. And I think this long deck right here could be a really special place. The 2 kids' bedrooms, I think, needs to have this circulation zone that's more facing towards the courtyard area. Maybe the master bedroom has the closets or the bathroom sort of behind the bed, because we know that the busy road is in that direction. That would give some noise reduction. And maybe there's sort of this fireplace in between the living room and the master suite, and that connector could be like a little sitting area. That fireplace might even be able to be a double-sided fireplace, so you can sit between the master and the living area and sit there and read a book. Okay, now I want to just take a quick little look at what that side of the house facing the pond could look like in elevation. And we know that it's going to be sitting up on top of the hill, with the hill sloping down towards the pond. And we know that each of these volumes can be expressed sort of individually. And we know we're going to have the big long deck sort of going across the back. And maybe that deck sort of connects to the grade. I think, sort of off the top of my head, a setup like this, we'd want this end facing the pond to almost be sort of all glass, right? Because that's where your views are, that's where your sun's going to be. And I think there's an opportunity to have sort of this roof that's set within those volumes that could block that summer sun, and maybe that would allow some larger windows below and some smaller windows up top. And I'm thinking that those get recessed back into the volume. I think at the main entry we need to do something to differentiate it from the rest of the volume. So maybe there's something that sticks up, maybe that's something that's a little bit more pronounced, and then maybe something at the end that again controls the shading device and just sort of helps to complete the massing. So there you have it. There's some conceptual sketching for a second design option for this custom home. I really like the first design option, and I really like some of the things that we've explored in the second design option. Now the next step from here is we're going to be looking at these 2 design options in a different media, because you don't always just want to work in the same way. I think, me personally, I like to work in different forms, whether it's sketching one day and then drawing on the computer the next, and then building a physical model the day after that. By switching the way that you're working, it allows you to think a little bit differently, and it allows you the opportunity to explore these design possibilities in much greater detail. So stick around for the next video in this series, and I think you're going to enjoy what's going to come next. Thanks. Bye.